I was admitted to the hospital around September 1969. Remember, no NDEs had been published then and not much was really known about religions then. Doctors from all over the world came to see if they could find out what was wrong with me. My neurologist had spread it out that I was a unique case. At first I wished he hadn't because it made me feel so stupid and helpless because I thought I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to die. At the end of the week a nurse told me, I had to take a bath. She brought me into the tub in the bathroom. She left the room while I washed my hair and body. Suddenly I saw what looked like a brain that was cut in half. I knew it was my head. I saw a spot in the center of the brain. As I went back to my bed, I thought repeatedly that since it was in the center of my brain I was going to die, but I wasn't afraid. When I got back in my bed, I asked myself, why not? Suddenly, I heard a man's voice, because you trust me. I looked around and saw no one. I knew that I had heard God's voice. Then I lay down and fell asleep. About a week later, I thought I had fallen asleep. My eyes were open and it appeared like I was being sucked up in a black vacuum cleaner. I couldn't move or breathe. I was afraid. Then I was in a gray misty area, and there I could breathe and move. I felt somewhat relaxed, but I didn't recognize anything. Suddenly I felt a hand on my left shoulder. I turned around and saw my grandmother. She had died about a month or two before I went in the hospital. I asked her where we were, and she pointed behind me. When I turned around, I saw a large white mansion. I walked towards it, continuously thinking I was going to get in trouble. Because it had to be a very rich, important person's house and I didn't even have permission to be there. I continued walking closer and noticed the dark green grass that was mowed to the most perfect level. There were numerous flowers and bushes arranged in many different ways around it. That's when I saw a white staircase that went up to the second floor of a very white mansion. I stood there staring at it. I remember thinking it was so fantastic. It reminded me of Zeus' mansion with all of the white pillars around it. I told myself that Zeus was just pretend, but it seemed to me that a god would have such a beautiful place. The light came out of the right side, walking along a walkway that went to the stairway. When the bright light reached the stairway, it began descending down towards me. It stopped 10 to 12 steps before me. It called out my name. In front of me it was sort of a TV showing my life. I was standing before it, and it said, "Come Cindy, follow me." That was when I could speak again. I said, "No, because if I go up there I will have to stay. I would be a crying angel sitting on a cloud and playing a harp. That would ruin your reputation." He turned around and laughed. He then asked me, why, because most people just follow me. I told him of my grandmother's death, and that if I was pronounced dead, I knew that my father would have a heart attack and die. My mother would then go crazy and be put in an institution. My 3 brothers and sister would be put in different homes. I didn't want that for my family. He laughed some more and said he understood, but he would bring me back 2 more times so I could know what I was giving up then. The second time we were walking in a beautiful mountain with so many gorgeous flowers, plants and animals. He told me that I didn't have to be afraid of the animals because he had made them as well as me. So many of them were funny, and others just talked. When we had walked down the path, quite a bit we were walking by a farm. A woman walked out and gave us a loaf of 12-grain bread that was fresh out of her oven. We thanked her and began eating the bread. He said that it was his favorite type of bread. We walked further and we began going a little lower again. We went inside a small cabin to talk with a woman who was sweeping her floor. We sat down and she brought each of us a glass of apple juice. She said her son was down by the creek fishing, and her husband and his friends were hunting. As we were walking down further I mentioned that I had not thought anyone would have a gun, let alone kill anything in heaven. He laughed and said Cindy's heaven is made of whatever makes her soul happy and comfortable. When we reached the bottom of the mountain, I could see a city in the distance. I could only tell you to look in the book of Revelation and you could see it there. The third time I noticed I was in a beautiful cabin in the mountains, and it was mine. There was a fireplace that had a picture above it, a bearskin rug on the floor, a kettle of vegetable soup brewing above the flames, and tomato soup in a refrigerator. I had made some quilts that were over the beds and chairs, as well as some rugs I had made that were also on the floors and walls. He arrived and we ate. I played some on a flute that I had. He took me to the edge of the mountain and we looked at the view. He said that when I came to heaven I could go anywhere I wanted, including any ocean or universe. I told him then that I would love it if we could go into a canoe and he could take me for a ride down. Suddenly, we were in the canoe and going down. I just kept looking at how beautiful it was. We then walked towards the mountain we had first come down on. We were walking along the wall of the New Jerusalem. I looked down at my right side. I was astounded because I could finally see his left hand holding my right. At that time, he told me I could ask him 7 questions and he would have to answer them. I said, "Really?" He said, "That's 1. I then said, "You mean if I ask you something but don't mean it you will count it?" He said, "That's 2. I then started thinking. I knew in the Bible it says ask and you will receive, but you must beware of how you word it. I asked him if I would be alive through my high school graduation. He laughed and said, "Cindy, you know you will now, it just won't be as easy as you would want it." Then I asked him if I would be able to get married and have children. He said, "Most definitely, but you will have many trials and tribulations down there." I knew I had asked him 4 questions, but they were all selfish. And I knew that I should ask something that could help all people. I then asked him one that all of us kids were asking. And we heard a lot of grown-ups asking. I know you love me and all life, but if you really love all of us continuously without end, then how can you send people to hell throughout eternity? He said, "Cindy, I do love all life without end. Some people chose to go to hell, I have already forgiven them, but they must forgive themselves." Suddenly I heard angelic voices warning that it was late and I had to hurry back. I asked him if I would ever see him again, and he said, "Always."